Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Bouncing back after a run-in with the criminal justice system, April is Second Chance Month. It's a time to raise awareness about the challenges faced by people with criminal records and efforts to successfully reintegrate them back into society. My guests know all too well about those difficulties, and they are now on the front lines to provide those opportunities and advocacy for returning citizens. My guests are Lamont Carey. He is the director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs. Rosalind Stiles is the co-founder of the nonprofit organization Jobs Not Guns. And William Lawson, peer navigator in the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs. Thank you all so much for joining us for this really important conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Certainly. I want to share just a few fast facts before we get into this conversation. 27% of people exiting prison are likely to be reincarcerated within 3 years, and many returning citizens face high unemployment rates, with studies showing 60% remain unemployed 1 year after their release. Also, returning citizens are 11 times more likely to be homeless than the general population. So before we talk about Second Chance Month, I want each of you to kind of share your own story briefly, and how you were able to navigate into the work of helping other returning citizens. I'll start with you, Ms. Stiles.
Well, my passion, being born and raised in Southeast Washington, my parents had 7 boys and 2 girls. And 3 of my brothers, unfortunately, fell into incarceration. One at an older age, who was a government employee, and the second one was a school security representative and who got involved in drugs. My youngest brother was the youngest one. He just became a victim. He was very vulnerable, and each of them survived incarceration, except for my youngest brother. He really had a hard time and a very hard struggle trying to re-enter. And so it became a part of my outcome to see whatever I can do in terms of returning citizens. I started volunteering very early with Roach Brown and the Inner Voices, which was a community program. And working with them, we had to understand that when you come back into the system, you're stigmatized as a convict, and that name and that identity stay with you for all of your life. And so my purpose for being here these days, in terms of Jobs Not Guns and Jobs Not Drugs, is to see how we can prevent our residents from going into the system. But if that happens, what can we do as a community to help them to re-enter into the workplace? My goal is 40 years of employment training and services. I've done employment overseas, around the country, and in my community. Employment, to learn a skill, a person can eat for a lifetime. And the Bible says you give them a fish, they eat for a day. You teach them to fish, they eat for a lifetime. And I believe that. So employment and training, not McDonald's, not Starbucks, but careers, apprenticeship careers, learning a trade, hospitality. And so what we have to do is, working with our returning citizens, is to give them a skill set. Don't stigmatize them, but give them a skill set where they can have a career and raise their family.
Okay.
Too much information?
No, ma'am. You did just fine. Thank you very much. Mr. Lawson, talk to me very briefly about your story. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, good evening. My name is William T. Lawson, and of course, I'm a returning citizen. I also work for the D.C. Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs as a peer navigator.
So let me stop you right there, Brother Lawson, because I've already introduced you. I asked you what your story was, brother.
Okay,
So
all right, okay. My story.
Yeah, I know who you work for, and I know what you're doing.
All right, my man. Okay.
Take that paper that's in front of you, turn it upside down, and talk to me about how you got here from there.
Okay, my story is very simple. I actually served 31 years and 10 months day for day in over 18 local, county, and federal institutions from 1977 till 2009. Okay, and upon coming home at the tender age of 53, I found myself back home and in the streets, right? And I'm a recovering everything. And when I literally tell you that, I mean exactly what I say, right? I don't do nothing now but drink water and Mountain Dews. That's it. Okay. And I travel around and I try to encourage and empower people. Why I do it? Because in a lot of people that I see out here in the community, and more prevalently behind the wall, I see me yesterday. I actually got a chance to change my life. I've actually done it. And, through this organization that I've been working with for the last 3 years, I have noticed how we have actually put that sparkle back in a few people's eyes, right? Because, honestly speaking from the heart, right? It's not easy making the transition from behind the wall back into society. Because all of us are pretty much stigmatized.
Yeah.
And once we get here, there are many barriers that we have to fight our way through. And where I work today, I make a difference. I actually go into the jail a couple of times a week and speak to individuals. It's something that probably should have been happening a long time ago. But be that as it may, it's happening today because of my director, right? He had the vision to actually want to send someone in and to try to help prepare some of these guys and women who are on the other side, who don't know where to go, who to contact, or anything. We go up in there and we actually make them aware of the services that are actually available to them in the district. I don't know if you know the statistics on what's going on throughout the United States, but I can pretty much guarantee you that, bar none, I don't believe there's another state that actually provides the level of services that the District of Columbia provides, right?
I do want to talk about that a little bit more down the road, but I also wanted to hear from Mr. Carey as well about, your story. And as I was asking Mr. Lawson, how you got here from there.
Well,
go ahead, Mr. Carey.
I usually like to say that I was born in Washington, D.C., but raised in prison. And so I read my first book cover to cover inside of prison. I dropped out of school. I think the 7th grade, I went for like 3 months. And I felt that life outside of school was more profitable for me. So by the time I was 16, I was charged as an adult. So in prison, got my GED, enrolled in the college program where I was taking business management, and they was talking about supply, demand, distribution. And I was like, I know that. I know that from the streets, right? And so getting the GED was my first mainstream win. And that what got me to enroll into the college program. And then as I was getting closer to release, I started thinking about, I'm a Black man with violent felony convictions. So what I'm gonna do? Probably not gonna get a job. So I started thinking entrepreneurship. And one of my outlets became writing books. So I wrote books while I was in prison. And what that did, it taught me how to envision a world outside of the world that I have known. It also taught me decision making, right? Because I had to get the book from beginning to end. It taught me how to become a student of human behavior. And so before I came home, my goal was to start a prison pen pal prison inmate calendar. But when I came home, I ended up starting a nonprofit, and I ended up in the arts where I was doing like spoken word, and I appeared on shows like HBO, the Deaf Poetry Jam, BET Lyric Cafe, The Wire, and I got to travel nationally and abroad. But then I started doing programming in institutions and all across the country, doing programs for youth and individuals that was incarcerated. And then one day I got a call, and my vision meshed well in with the mayor's vision. And so this gave me the opportunity to help individuals that I knew, that come from the communities that I come from, that know the history that I know, but also had that fear of how am I going to face this? I can't go home and live with my family because they think the feds going to be running in and out of their house. So I had to deal with homelessness when I first came home. I had to deal with the peer pressure because society keeps going when I went to prison. But it seemed like some of the individuals waiting for me to come home to activate their life. And so I had to focus. I had to focus that make sure every day that I wake up free, that I was winning. And I just had to build on that success. And now, every day that I wake up with my amazing team at Morka, we are that support system for individuals that may not have a support system, that come through our agency doors, that's looking for a second chance because some of them was deciding, if this doesn't work out, I'm going back in the streets. And so we try to do everything in our power to help find that gateway for them to end up on the pathway to the middle class. And so I have found my passion and my life purpose by making sure that I use the transferable skills from my other life to apply it, even in the conversations that I have with individuals that walk into the doors of Morka.
Let me ask, because I only have about 2 minutes before the break. Ms. Stiles, you got an event that you want to share with us. Briefly tell me what it is and how people can get more information. And I know, Mr. Carey, you have some event stuff that you want to share too before the break. But go ahead, Ms. Stiles.
Okay, Jobs Not Guns was created by Linda Holly Harper by the mayor's mandate for the Office of Gun Violence. Mm-hmm. Taking that mantra together, putting it together, we put together a community program based on my knowledge that people you can't get a job most of the time. You have to have a skill set or training. We were raised during the days when blue collar worker was able to take care of their families.
So let me ask you, what is happening and when and where?
Jobs Not Guns.
I'm a little low on time.
All right. Jobs Not Guns was created to help people to find a job, employment, training, and support services. Jobs Not Drugs joined the team. We pulled that on the team this past year to address the opioid crisis. So tomorrow we're doing Jobs Not Guns and Jobs Not Drugs for youth that are east of the Anacostia River. Mm-hmm. Southeast Washington has the highest rate of the perpetrators of gun violence and drug use.
So what's happening tomorrow, Ms.
Tomorrow we're having a workshop from 10 to 2 at Our Lady Perpetual Help Church in the Panorama Room. We have over 30 businesses, community organizations, apprenticeship training programs that are coming to the table to share with young people how to, number one, get and to attain and keep a career, not just a job. If they don't have a skill set, we try to teach them to get them to prepare now through hospitality programs, apprenticeship programs, any kind of self-help programs.
And so let me stop you, Ms. Stiles, because as I said, I'm really low on time.
Okay.
Mr. Carey, tell me about your program real quick. You've got 15 seconds. I've got to take a break.
So we got several programs that's taking place this month, but the best way you can find out all of them is go to our Instagram page at Orca_DC. But the one that I want to leave your listeners with before the break is the Welcome Home Expo for Returning Citizens that's taking place at the DC Armory on April the 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We got service providers, we got employers, we got training programs, we got returning citizens with small businesses, and we got panels that's going to be engaging and empowering. So April the 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., all is welcome, so you can get this information on how we can help return the citizens.
Thank you so much. Need to take a break, but we will be back. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about successfully reintegrating returning citizens into society. My guests are Lamont Carey, Director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs, Rosalind Stiles, co-founder of the nonprofit Jobs Not Guns, and William Lawson, peer navigator in the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs. One of the things that we were talking about before the break, and this is really, really important because we know that recidivism is real, and I think that Mr. Lawson, you bring a particularly interesting perspective because you spent so much time on the outside. You have been able to do what is so difficult for a lot of people to do, which is to transition. Particularly, let's just say it, you are one of the veterans in this particular conversation. How were you able to do that? And talk to us about the specific challenges that you faced, because when you finally got out, the world had changed so much.
Yes. When I first actually came home, to say that I was shocked, it's an understatement, because I came home at 53.
Mm-hmm.
And being 53,
tender age of 53.
at the tender age of 53, and actually trying to fit in, I felt alone for a while. And as I reached out and I tried to redo everything, because first and foremost, I had to take off everything that I had been carrying for over 3 decades while I was incarcerated. And I know that, me being a realist with myself, right? I had gotten to a point when I was on the inside that I had gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired. Okay. And I knew that this was my one shot. So once I came home, I actually tried to get help getting a job. And you talk about barriers. There were many barriers because I wasn't prepared for what I was faced with. I had no one actually come and give me any heads up on what was going on out in society. So I actually had to walk it, and I had to experience it. And I actually linked up with some other individuals who had actually were just like me, who were returning citizens. Mm-hmm. All of us had actually done, wide different numbers of time. And we decided that since most of us were older, we couldn't really get jobs, because during that time, society, in the district, they were paying more attention to the younger population because of the crime rate, everything that was going on. Most of the programs were geared towards 18 to 20, 25, 24-year-olds. So we actually got together and we actually started doing positive things in the community, right? We started sharing our experiences, right? Once again, I was sick and tired. Not only was I sick and tired, but I come to find out there were many of us who were sick and tired. And we wanted to do something positive. We actually done that, right? And over the time that I was out, I got involved in everything that I could find that was positive. Initially, I had to volunteer.
Okay.
I did a lot of volunteer work. I started speaking. I started going to different places and speaking about my life experiences on the inside and making the transition to the outside. And I was advocating all the time advocating for our people. Okay. And that led me to actually meeting the director of MORCA. Okay. And we actually met at an event where we both spoke. Mm-hmm. Eventually, he gave me a call and asked me, what was I doing when I told him I was still unemployed. But I was going
Wow.
out and I was
Okay.
speaking. He encouraged me to reach out, right? I applied for a job with Morka, and I've been with them ever since. And, you know, I know what we're doing that's making a difference, right? You know, the vision that he had, that he have right now, he's had the same vision all the time. And to say that it was easy for him, I tip my hat to that brother. You know why? Because he has a big heart, okay? And I actually know several directors of different organizations, and nobody works harder than this man. That's why I will step up for him any day of the week, because I know that it's not so much about him, it's about the community.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, Ms. Stiles, with the work that you are doing now for returning citizens, what is the most difficult challenge that you think that they face? What is getting in the way of them making that successful transition?
Well, in my 20 years as president of the National Association of Minority Contractors, my background is in the building trades.
Okay.
And I find that the skill set that returning citizens have for understanding how to use their hands and make a living, most of the time they have been discriminated against because of technology. When the technology came into the work environment, they were not used to or exposed to, and they could not make the adjustment. But I've found and I've helped many of our returning citizens in the building trades in terms of learning a craft, learning a skill. Most of the time, if they have challenges, we can help them with counseling. But the skill set, that is the easiest part of transition for returning citizens, is learning a craft and a trade. And then they also learn that building trades is not just cleaning up work sites. They can actually learn how to be equal to engineers in terms of their trades. I have a person who started as a number runner and a drug lookout. He is now a regional representative in the building trades. And how did he learn? He learned by using his mind, his body, and his spirit and his craft. He now knows carpentry like the back of his hand, which is what we were raised on learning. When we were young, we always had a skill. And that's what most of the returning citizens can be exposed to. And not only to learn a trade, but to build their own business, become entrepreneurs, provide for their family. But they're stigmatized because they don't want to sit behind a computer all day long. And because that has not been the craft that they were exposed to. So that's what I find. So tomorrow we have a great emphasis on entrepreneurship and apprenticeship programs. We're talking about not just building trades, hospitality. There are some of the best chefs in the world that that have been returning citizens and learned how to cook. My brother became a cook in the military for one of the base commanders, private chef. I mean, so those are the things that we have to go back to, is how to use our hands in terms of creating opportunities. And that's what they look for. And that's what we help them with, to marry them with.
You know, Mr. Carey, she makes such a great point, particularly when they get out. But I think one of the things that's so important, and obviously you would know this, much better than somebody on the outside, when someone is about to be released, a year out, 9 months, 6 months out, how is that transition handled? Or under the best of circumstances, how do you think that transition should be handled so that they are prepared, not just with their hands, but with their mindset to re-enter society?
So, so one, take into account that DC doesn't have a prison.
Right.
So our residents are housed all over the country. And some of the residents, because the district is so progressive, we've changed laws to give juveniles and young adults an opportunity to repetition the court for release. And some of these individuals didn't have a release date. And so how reentry should be. So one of the things that we had campaigned for a few years ago was to turn regular institutional jobs into pre-apprenticeship programs, right? Because prisoners, believe it or not, do everything inside of the prison except for open and close the gate. They're doing the plumbing, they're doing the electricity, they're doing the cooking, the landscaping, you name it. Prison is a city within inside of a larger city, and the operators of that city is the residents who are cast as inmates at the time, right? So one of the biggest barriers is the reentry process. So if an individual get released and they don't have an ID, it takes or social security card or birth certificate, it takes a minimum of 2 weeks to get a social security card. Now, if you remember in the district and around the country, you almost need an ID to get in some private apartment complexes, some public apartment complexes, right? So having that 2 week gap for the social security card, then you got to get the birth certificate, then you got to get the ID. So we're saying individuals are operating behind 3 weeks before they get the basics to be able to receive the basics, right? So some of the other challenges is they're coming from a population. Just like when we teach our young boys that men don't cry, you don't ask for help, you don't show weaknesses. Coming from prison, you're still doing with that same mentality, even though the mindset has changed. Because the majority of our population that are incarcerated want to come home, want to do the right thing, want to give their passions to the free world. And one of the biggest things that individuals walk into my agency wanting to do is mentor, to prevent young people from going down that same path. And so as we think about the reentry phase, some of the things that we trying to work on to spread to these institutions is one, that individuals are coming home with a skill set. Some of these individuals should be able to walk right into apprenticeship program and thrive. But some of the biggest barriers is when you come home, where you're going to live. Right? I move into my family house. It's like they give you a 3 month window. They want you to leave prison behind like it was a cloth, right? Now they're realizing that it was experience full of trauma and all other kinds of experience. They want you to find a job that within the next month, they want you to move out in the third month, right? We have individuals that come into our office and sometimes they don't say, I have this skill set, because the pressure to get a job because of where they're staying, whether it's with family, friends, or transitional house or wherever. So there's this level of pressure, and even transitional houses have a 3 month, right? And so there's this pressure to get a job. When I came home, my parole officer got me a job at Denny's as a host, holding the door. I'm getting irritated because I'm opening the door saying, welcome to Denny's, come back to Denny's again. And these people are not even thanking me for holding the door. But that can determine life or death in some institutions that I've been in on respect, right? So that job didn't last. And so our part of Morca's job is not only to help the returning citizen to successfully to reenter, but educate the community on some of the barriers that exist within us. Because I'm telling you, I've only met 2 individuals the time that I was in prison. I've probably been in 9 different institutions that said they was coming home to break the law. The majority of individuals are coming home to do the right thing, but there's these pressures and this responsibility that some have. Some say, I got to go home and take care of my family, right? You can't take care of your family until you get your footing, right? So a lot of times they hit the ground trying to find opportunities to support other people versus going down the park and taking their shoes off and walking on the grass and recognizing that they're free, right? So that is the challenge. But that termination is there. Once you connect them with an opportunity that they can thrive in, they thrive. The digital divide is a barrier. And we was very fortunate that the mayor gave us some laptops like 2 years ago, and we gave out like 3,700 Chromebooks for
Right.
returning citizens to bridge that gap, right? That is a real thing. But the bigger thing is society. Sometimes it's our family that don't believe that we're changed because they've had experiences with other people that came home and went back. Or they've had some challenges with individuals where they become victims and they become terrified of the thought of somebody has been in prison. But believe me, there isn't a community in the District of Columbia, there isn't a store that you walk into, there isn't a bus that you get on that the bus driver may not be the bus driver may be a returning citizen. The business that you're walking into may be owned by the returning citizen, and the cashier is a returning citizen. We're closer than people think. The person that'll stop your child from running in the street just may be a returning citizen. The person that's in your community right now that is stopping the wars between communities, chances are that they're a returning citizen, right? And so sometimes society has this image of what they think a returning citizen is, and it's never Mr. Lawson. It's never myself, the director of a government agency, that is a returning citizen. And so if you give returning citizen opportunity, we're going to change the world because we're already doing it. But more of us, if we can get access to opportunities, we will continue to do it. And that is what my office does. Create those opportunities through partnerships for returning citizens to thrive, to be pillars of our community, to enter the pathway to the middle class, but more importantly, to be human, because they have the same dreams, or we have the same dreams as everybody else. We want to be able to take care of ourselves. We want to be able to love on our family, and we want to be able to be a provider.
Mr. Lawson, let me ask you, when you were released, and you said earlier that the thing that you wanted to do was to mentor, to speak, and to have an impact on the community, but you still had to feed and house yourself. So how did you do that, even as you were already thinking forward about not going back?
One of the things I had to do was I had to come up with a plan. The director mentioned that he had, we all have skill settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in the streets. So when I first came home, when I found out that I couldn't get a job, the first thing I did was I went to a flea market.
Okay.
Washington, D.C. has one of the biggest ones out there back during the time. And it still exists. And I would go down there and I would buy stuff, and I would make every holiday, you would see me on somebody's property selling cards, selling socks, you name it. I would find out what it was. Look, Valentine's Day, I had roses for you. I had a teddy bear for you, okay? And you could go down there and get this stuff little for nothing, and you could put together a package. You see it every holiday. Almost at every corner is somebody out there. That's what I did for a couple of years, along with everything else that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And the reason I ask is because, just like all of you were saying, and particularly Ms. Stiles too, that there are some barriers that may seem insurmountable for a lot of people. And it's one thing if someone is incarcerated for 5 years, and 5 years certainly is nothing to sneeze at, certainly, or 10 years where they're being rehabilitated. But when you're talking about somebody, and you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Lawson, somebody who may have been in for 25 years for an extremely violent crime, or 30 years, then you get into the debate about punishment versus rehabilitation, keeping somebody out of the community because the system deems them a danger, to society. But whether it's 5 years or 30 years, as you said, kind of, coming out, and as Mr. Carey said, sometimes you're less likely to put your foot in, in the grass and realize that that you are now free. And instead you're trying to think, how am I going to eat? How am I going to house myself? How am I going to reconnect with my family really? And to get an understanding of, who I am. Because, that sense of self, Miss Styles, I would imagine is a big thing as it relates to transitioning back into the real world.
It absolutely is. And that's why we have a myriad of programs and services here in the district that address most of the barriers that the returning citizens are facing. There was a time when I was young, they didn't have drug counseling programs.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, young men didn't, and we always talk about young men. We don't even talk about the young women.
How about that?
Yeah, and we had young men who, like what Lamont said, who did, out of respect, they didn't want to even talk about the humiliation that they had to overcome. All of those things. To see somebody 18 years old doing work that you can do and you're 40 and 50 years old. I mean, it is, so we have programs now. We have to work like a network so that we can support each other. The University of the District of Columbia has a pre-apprenticeship program. And there are programs everywhere. The United Planet Organization, one of the greatest, what we used to call poverty programs that was ever created. And these programs are here and they're being funded to help all of our residents who need a second chance to address what their challenges are. I can help them with maybe employment and training, but a lot of them need to have psychological help. Some of them have medical barriers that keep them from being able to work. And housing, like you said, is a big deal. But we have to work collectively. No one person, one organization is not going to cut it. We all have to be able to come to the table and say, I want to be a part of the answer, the solution, because the results of not doing it is recidivism. That means that they're going back, they're coming back, and they're going to do all of the bad things that they did that got them there in the first place.
Ms. Styles, let me ask you this real quick, because you mentioned that, and I think it's really, really important. Briefly talk about some of the obstacles and challenges that women face returning as opposed to when compared to men.
One of the greatest challenges right now is self-esteem among females. You would be surprised at the things that young women have not been trained or exposed to. And that they're trying to compete most of the time with the male persona. Young females need to know, number one, they've got to learn how to love themselves again. They need to know what it is to be female, to be a woman, a young lady. And so outside of just a skill set, whoever thought that 3 young women would kill a cab driver? But you think about the environment that they've been exposed to. They don't have the training. They don't have the nurturing. They don't have the religious and the educational backgrounds within their homes. We're talking about generations of young women who are raising young men who themselves didn't have the good, the grounded, the way of life. So we have a responsibility with these young girls so that they can, number one, they need to be taught and trained about their own self-worth. And then you can also work with them with employment and training. I'm a product of the streets, as you say. But at 17 and pregnant, I made a decision to go back to school. I made a decision to raise my daughter. I made a decision to resist the pitfalls of life. But you know why? Because my mother was there. Because my community was there. If we did something wrong, everybody on the street knew it. and they all would always coach you. And then my church was there. So
Oh,
those are the kinds of things, and it's more prevalent now with young women who become disposable in society, and they're raising our young men. So I am partnering now with High Tea Society. You're like, what is the High Tea Society? But it was a group. Dr. Terrell used to teach young girls how to be young ladies. It is not, you're not a weak person because you're a young lady. It's a way of life and a way of self-worth that we need to re-implement and reinstitute into our females. We're looking to put together a program now that talks about just us girls, where we can talk to them about their own self-esteem, their self-worth, and then how they can transition from an environment of institution and still come out and on the other side and be a productive citizens. Young ladies have it twice as hard as young men, but they don't talk about it.
Mr. Carey, I've got a minute left. I'll let you have a final word. What do you want people to know about returning citizens that perhaps they don't know? How might their attitudes or their actions help with the transition? I'll give you a minute real quick.
So one, it is not all gloom and doom. You have returning citizens. Just last week, we took a picture with the mayor of returning citizens that work in DC government. The thing that I want you to understand about returning citizens, all we're looking for is an opportunity to give you the best of ourselves, whether skill-wise, whether experience-wise, to redirect young people, as Ms. Stiles was talking about. There are a plethora of programs and opportunities in the district. Right now for this event, we partner with United Healthcare, Reform Alliance, DC Central Kitchen, Department of Employment Services. There are programs. We have a relationship with the DMV to help individuals get their IDs learned. We have a program with Georgetown University where we're teaching returning citizens how to be paralegals. We partner with DSLBD to teach them how to become entrepreneurs. So it is not all gloom and doom, and the community is stepping up more than ever in my lifetime or my experience from being home from prison to create opportunities. All I ask of you is to continue to connect with us. Let's build relationships and develop these programs that you are looking to give returning citizens, because last year we served 5,453 returning citizens that are looking for an opportunity to be the best neighbor, to be the best employer, to be the best employee that they could possibly be. And all I'm asking you is to work with us to be able to give them a chance. And I see you on April the 23rd at DC Armory from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Thank you all so much, Lamont Carey, Rosalind Stiles, William Lawson. I really appreciate your time and your passion and the work that you're doing to help the community thrive and the people who are coming back. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed being here.
Well, thank you so much. That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, April 8th. I'm Harold Fisher.